know that you could do that in the 80s.
There's something about Nathaniel Hawthorne here too, because Nathaniel Hawthorne, who's, you know,
wait. You're bringing up,
I'm bringing up literature. I'm going to do a Mike Caulfield right now. Hold on.
You're the one, like,
hold my beer, Mike. Hold my beer.
Like Mike's going to bring up Emily Bronte again. And like,
exactly.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Hawthorne,
All right,
19th century American writer. If you haven't read him, he's really good. Anyway, a lot of his short stories, you know, the name of the characters is Goodman. They go out into the wilderness, which for the Puritans was like this crazy space. And then they have these visions of the devil or of sex or of all these weird things. And you could make an argument, and those are allegorical stories. You can make an argument that, you know, there's a little bit of playing that Brickman's doing with that. And I really I enjoy it. I enjoy reading this as an allegory. And that's why when it comes down to that hard ending, like, I love you, it's like, or, you know, things are so hard. It's like, what?
Welcome to Couch to 4K. I'm Mike Caulfield. This is Jim Groom. What are we about, Jim? What is this podcast about?
Physical media will save the world.
Physical media will save the world.
We've said movies
2 films
are
better than
1.
6 films are better than 2. I did a little less of that this week, but I think we still got a lot to talk about. And lately, we've been talking about the allegorical 80s, and today we're going to talk about Risky Business, which is another allegory out of the 80s. So I don't know that we need to do the summary of Risky Business, but I'll try to do it. I don't have anything in front of me, but I'll try to do it. You have Joel Goodson, who, like Goodson, talk about the allegorical 80s.
Is this a Hawthorne book?
Who is a high school student, kind of at a crossroads of his life, looking to get his golden ticket to Princeton and also to move into adulthood in a number of ways, including like sexually, professionally, academically, and so forth. He, over the course of a weekend where his parents go away, loses a number of things, gains a few things, and ends up, depending on which ending of the movie you watch, either with a ticket to the Ivy League or a ticket to the Ivy League and a girlfriend. And we will talk about that. I thought maybe, Jim, because we had some back and forth on this, I thought we'd immediately get to the ending and then maybe work our way into other topics, because I feel like that's the burning issue. For people that don't know, there are 2 endings for this. Generally, I hate director's cuts. I really do not like director's cuts. I feel like the director's cut is almost always the worst cut. I mean, there are exceptions to that. Blade Runner is a good exception where the director's cut is better because they ditch that.
Yeah,
they ditch the voiceover, and the ending with the origami is like kind of like the point, right?
She won't live, but then again, who does?
Nice. That's very good, Jim. We got to bring more of that talent into this.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to.
I thought Risky Business, when I watched the director's cut, which I had never seen before, and I watched it on the Criterion 4K, I thought the director's cut was brilliant. And I WhatsApped you, Jim, to say, hey, you got to watch the director's cut. It changes this whole movie for the better. And you had some thoughts on that, Jim.
I did. So, couple of things. First thing is, I had no idea there was an alternative ending to Risky Business. It doesn't really seem like one of those movies where there's some burning alternative ending out there.
Burning question in the audience's mind.
That's going to change the whole movie. And so I was super interested when you said that, because I'll come clean from the beginning. I don't have the Criterion disc in front of me. I watched this as a streaming, even though I think physical media will save the world. I did stream this. Okay. Yeah. I'll put on my hair shirt later and I'll flagellate myself. But I was interested, you got me interested. So I watched the theatrical release, and then I got on internet. You can find it. Anyone out there on YouTube can find it. You can find the director's cut release. And the director's cut release is really specific, right? It cuts, the one at least Criterion put on their discs. it cuts the last part of the film. So we're going to get ahead, but I'll set it up, Mike, and then you correct anything I get wrong. Joel and help me, Rebecca De Mornay's character, what's her name? Lana, right? Joel and Lana are at the, fancy restaurant at the end of the movie. And it's a kind of
both cuts, right?
That's right.
Both cuts have them at the restaurant.
They're at the restaurant, and this is where Joel's character is basically saying to Lana, like, hey, did you set me up when you put me on the train? And was that all to get Guido the killer pimp into my house so they could kind of clean it out and then basically take all the money I made and make my life miserable, et cetera, et cetera? And she says, kind of not entirely committing, but is saying at least like, I did it because I wanted to be with you. She says,
I know you won't believe me, right? Yeah, like, I know you won't believe. I know what it looks like, right? Yeah.
And she's also saying, I did it because I like you, right?
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't just
like what we had was real.
Exactly.
Regardless of how things,
Right. And then he says, I say that because I don't want you to get hurt. And I like that line because the line there is he's saying, like, I know this is a con and you're playing a long con game with Guido the killer pimp and everybody else, and you got to be careful, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a dangerous game you're playing. And she kind of blows that off. And I think there's a part also in that conversation where she's saying, look, Joel, you and me, we're good. We're going to be successful in our separate enterprises.
It's difficult because what happens with these two endings is it's not just they tack on something, it's that they cut certain lines out. The theatrical cut has certain lines added or certain lines kept in and certain lines taken out of that scene where they're at that top of the building. And so there are things that happen
in there.
Both.
So is in the theatrical, I know in the theatrical release where she says, you and I, Joe, we're going to be successful. We're going to make it.
In both of them have that line. Both of them, I may get some of this wrong, but I watched it a couple times precisely because of this problem. Both of them have the line, I think you and me, we're both going to make it big.
Right. Exactly.
Is the line, right? What changes, the biggest thing that changes is that after she says that, there's in the director's cut, there's sort of a longer hold on it and it goes back and forth. And she says just a little bit. And she says, following that, she says, kind of like tearing up, she says, I just want to know, why is it got to be so hard? And she looks very mournful. And that's not in the theatrical release. And then you see Tom Cruise, who I got to say, like, no matter what you think about this ending, acting his fucking heart out with like a depth of feeling in his eyes. Come on. Like,
throughout the movie.
You're human too, Jim. Yeah. I don't even like Tom Cruise. And
he's great in this.
And occasionally he pulls that out. He pulled that out in Magnolia and he pulled that out here out of me. I'm like, I'm feeling feelings for Tom Cruise, but has a depth of feeling in his eyes and then says, come here. And he sort of hugs her on her lap and you see this kind of beautiful scene.
I was like, wait, is she going to go over to him and pull like the train scene in the middle of all these old guys in the restaurant? I was like, this is the weirdest alternative ending.
It's a very tender scene. I mean, I think you called it sentimental and that's not wrong. It's sentimental, but it's also bittersweet. In the sort of feeling you get much more of a feeling that in particular, Lana's not going to be okay in that one. And that Tom Cruise, and this is what Brickman says in the commentary, is this for this, it's, they talk about this in plot structure as like a chiasmus, like a crossing, that you start with Lana being the one that kind of knows everything and is the strong one helping Tom Cruise. And now it's Tom Cruise and Lana has got into that position.
And that's a good point. You bring that up.
Yeah.
So, and that ends the movie. I was surprised, but the movie ends. Now, in the theatrical release, what happens is after they're talking and he's like, I just don't want you to get hurt. And she looks knowingly at him. It cuts and they're walking in a park in the city, I imagine, or somewhere. And, he's like, or she's like to him, or he's like to her, I guess we're not going to see much of each other anymore. And they're like, no, we're not. And then she's like, you want to spend, at least one more night together? And Tom Cruise's character, Joel, is like, well, that depends. How much money you got? Which is what she says to him at the beginning. And so he's learning from her, and they have this kind of fun exchange as they're walking out, basically walking out the image of the picture. And they're going back and forth, and you can see, obviously, he's got the knowledge from her, and that sense of apprenticeship between them is somewhat over, but you still feel very positive about both their kind of potential.
I think they kind of become equal, right? They're kind of on, I mean, there's a toying with like, okay, now he's in this position, but I think they kind of both become equal. And that's probably the biggest shift is that.
And my argument against the director's cut. And so, and the other thing that I love is supposedly David Geffen says to Brickman, no, we're not doing your cut. We're doing this cut, which is the cut we just talked about with them walking out into the stream. It's far more kind of like transactional between them. They still have that jokingly sense. And Brickman was pissed. Is that right? I mean, from what you heard on the commentary?
As a matter of fact, on the commentary for the 30, so the Criterion has the commentary that has Cruise and Brickman and I forget who else is this one other person at the table. The
John Avnet.
Yeah. And so Brickman is still butthurt over it. This is the third. It's probably coming off the 30th anniversary DVD. So this would have been 2013. And like he's pretty positive about David Geffen. He talks in the early on how nobody would look at this, and it was David Geffen that kind of saved him. David Geffen looked at this and said, "We're going to make this." And David Geffen's one big thing was initially Lana and Tom Cruise had been like the same age, and he's like, we're not going to put like a 17, 18-year-old prostitute in this. Lana's got to be older than him, which is absolutely like that's like. Geffen was absolutely right about that. Right. Like you couldn't watch this, or at least now. I don't know what people's eyes would have been back then, but like absolutely right for Geffen. Like it changes the story, into like Lana is already in adulthood and Tom Cruise is sort of coming along. Great thing, very nice to Geffen, but he gets to that last scene. He's been so positive about the movie. And then he just starts talking, and you can feel Tom Cruise being like, Paul. You got to calm down here. And what Cruise says is, so what Brickman says is he really liked the bittersweetness of the ending, in that there was this sort of crossing, and that it was really for him the story was always like you kind of learn that life's not fair, right? And that is the lesson of growing up, is that you can do everything right and like still things cannot work out. And obviously things do kind of work out for Cruise in both cuts, and they gets into Princeton.
There's no, he still gets into Princeton in the director's cut.
Yeah, in the director's cut, he still gets into Princeton. Although that was something, I guess, that Brickman was also like not sure on, but was fine with in the end. But this was a way of showing that, like, life is hard, and that's part of the induction into adulthood.
Not only did Geffen fund the movie, make a great recommendation with Lana and Rebecca De Mornay, who I think rules this movie alongside Cruise, but he also saved the ending, because the theatrical ending is much better, in my opinion, than the director's cut. And here's my reason why.
Make the argument.
My reason why is the tone of this movie throughout is dreamlike, is somewhat removed and ironic, never has the seriousness of a movie like The Graduate, who people are comparing it to, and that kind of 60s sense of like, oh, wow, we're going to go. This movie was always kind of a proto-90s movie. It was already all the way to the side of critiquing, these kind of movies to begin with. These kind of sex-obsessed, boyhood suburban movies. I mean, it was a complete criticism of it. Not only with that, but it was criticizing the kind of university system and the Ivies and what they become. It was like black criticism after black criticism, and it was funny and it was brilliantly written. It never could have tied it up cleanly by Joel saying to Lana, you know what? I understand, I love you, and then kind of cleaning that up. In fact, the fact that they walk off at the end and there's still this kind of uncertainty around the transactional nature of their relationship. I mean, it's kind of the uncertainty that The Graduate ends with. So in fact, I would argue that Geffen gave us the Graduate ending of Risky Business by actually having the uncertainty of them walking away, still talking transactionally.
So this is the core of it. Brickman thought, I think in his head, he was making The Graduate. Now, he pulls a lot of other stuff. He talks about how he was looking at The Conformist, as we found out, like, multiple times. People are pulling from The Conformist here.
Everyone used The Conformist.
Yeah, and so, but, like, if you look at the sort of dynamics of it, like, it's clear he kind of thinks he's not making Porky's, he's making The Graduate, right? And so this is an interesting point, Jim, that maybe this is actually maybe this is the more Graduate ending if you're making this sort of comedy.
In 1983. If it was 67, it might be different. But in 83, I think that Geffen's ending is the more Graduate ending. And the other thing is, who was Mrs. Robinson in Risky Business? It's not clear ever.
Yeah.
Who is that figure? So,
well, the other piece you're getting here, and this is not just because we watched this last week, but like, you can't watch this, which is about, is an allegory using a call girl, and not think of American Gigolo too. And like, I wonder partially if what was in his head was the ending of American Gigolo, where like you have Richard Gere, and Richard Gere is sort of at that point reduced to nothing. And then I wonder if maybe that was what was in his head.
Exactly. And I thought I'll be honest with you, I thought the American Gigolo ending was really shocky until we talked last week. And you kind of, you resurrected.
I brought you along on the next one, but I might be coming along on this, on this ending.
I just think it fits the movie better. And I think it kind of keeps that criticism and that sarcasm and the wit, because this is, watching it again, wit. This is such a funny movie. And it's still really good. And everyone plays their role really well. And, parts that people talk about in this film, like, when he does the dance and the underwear and stuff, like, those are the least, they're fun, whatever, but they're the least impressive parts of this movie, right? It's really when he goes and he's dealing with the nurse and the institutions and like these moments where you're just like, this is wonderful.
Well, and the dreamlike sequences too, which are just phenomenal. So what Cruise says, and maybe we'll move on and talk about what the movie is about from here. But what Cruise says to Brickman, and it's the kind of point that you're getting here, is Cruise supported the original ending, right? And he was hoping for the original ending, but he likes the ending they got too. And what he says to Brickman is like, you don't have to beat people. More or less, he's saying on the commentary, people got it. He says to Paul, he says, Paul, people got it. Like, people got it. Audiences are smart. I think audiences are smart. Like, and I think they get it, at a certain level. Right. And, and Cruise is saying this too. In 2013, he's also been a director of a lot of films as well. And honestly, there's a lot of Cruise films I don't like, but his point is that, you just gotta assume that the people that would have gotten the first ending are also the people that get the second ending too. And that you're able to make the point without losing some of the joy in investment that people have in the joy of this film, because there is a way I'm starting to see it. Like, there's a sort of weird, bizarre joy in this film. And freneticism, and the ending kind of says that was all a lie. At the end, this is Taxi Driver or something,
Exactly. It's a good point. I mean, and it's not there. It's definitely well within the irony of the 80s, and the whole thing is like, people put on the glasses, people put on the jacket, like the American Gigolo, like Tom Cruise became a superstar as a result of this movie. And like he became a personage, you know, he was now a kind of celebrity. And people like my older brother, who was like 5 years older than me, would walk around with the glasses and would do the whole dance. Like, you know, do the dance. And, like it was like a thing. Like this guy, Brickman, kind of rather than focusing on the ending, that whether or not, take it or leave it, he created a brilliant film. Wrote it, right? Like directed it for a first-time director. This is amazing. And so that guy,
let's talk about
Richard Chew is who I want to talk about. Yeah. Because that guy, I think, was the visual mind behind this movie.
The editing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Richard Chew.
Like those scenes with the train.
The scenes with the trains.
All the editing they do and the slowing it down and the whole kind of
they do two things with the scenes with the trains. But I want to put the trains on hold. I'm going to make a note here and put the trains on hold. Because let's get into the casting. So one of the things that you'll get on the Criterion release is you get these supplements. And I thought one of the interesting things about the supplements here is normally you get something with the DP, normally you get something maybe with the director or producer or something. They have a interview on here in the supplements, and there's not a whole bunch of supplements. They have an interview with the casting director, which I generally don't see, right? And they have an interview with the casting director, and the casting director, she says, you know, we never get interviewed. The reason you're interviewing me now is because Paul Brickman told you that you've got to interview me for this. And she says something, though, that I am going to keep in my mind for a long time. She says, people say that casting directors discover stars. And she says, that's not true. Movies discover stars. The thing is, most of the time in the universe, you have an actor, they have a specific range and set of skills. And they are put into a movie that exercises a particular range and set of skills. And most of the time, the match, even for someone that's immensely talented, the match is not there, right? You don't get the star doesn't get into something that can actually show what they can do. And what she says happened in this movie was you had a set of stars, and the film and the stars, and she'll take some credit for it, but like the film and the stars work together in a way that suddenly you're like, this is what these people can do. And what I'll say about Cruise is this is kind of before the Brat Pack, but Cruise in this movie, and I am not a Tom Cruise fan. I really am not. But Cruise in this movie he's Anthony Michael Hall. He's Matt Dillon. Totally. He's James Spader, like a brooding James Spader. Right? He's all of these things, and he's doing it fluidly, like in between, in a way that he's like the Brat Pack really comes about like just after this, but he's like a one-man Brat Pack in this film, and he does it so fluidly that you're not even going like, wow, look at the range. You're just like, this is a human, and then you look back and you're like, the way he's like running around, like kind of in this weird sort of frenetic way is very Anthony Michael Hall. And the way that he like stands up, you know, to this guy is very sort of Matt Dillon. And the way that he sits at that table and looks with this sort of deep understanding is like James Spader. And he's all of these things in this movie. And there's a way in which Tom Cruise now has become, in a lot of things, has become just Tom Cruise. Right? Like, but in this movie, he's not that. He's just got this amazing range. And like, we should talk about De Mornay too. Like, they all come, and the casting director talks about this, they all come from different sort of schools of acting. De Mornay comes from a method acting, I forget, like Strasberg or whoever the person at New York that everybody was working with.
I think that is the name. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, and she is like, I'm going to understand the soul of this character, and then that is going to propel me. And you see that, like her, like she has a sense of who this character is at this very, very deep level that like allows her to do a character that seems contradictory and it seems very coherent. And I think that's the thing that people got to recognize about that. Cruise comes in, and the casting director says, and Paul Brickman said this was the thing that killed him. Cruise comes in to audition for this, and they'd been looking for a person for this Geffen, the other thing Geffen said is, don't rush on the casting. Get the right person. Do not rush on the casting. And that and ends up Geffen again. Like, this
Geffen,
is like said,
man.
There's a reason why he's a billionaire.
Damn, Geffen.
And so Cruise comes in very late into it. Cruise comes in, he does a reading on a line. He does a reading on a scene. And then at the end of it, he says, hold on a second, would be okay, like, I'd like to redo that and take it in a different direction. Like, this is Cruise, a nobody, comes in to audition for this film, does the scene, comes to the end of it, and then he stops and he says, hey, everybody out here, all you people, like, I don't like how I did that. I have an idea for a different direction we can take this. And like, they're kind of like, what the fuck? Like, like, who are you again? And they're like, oh, okay, go ahead and do it. He takes it that different direction and he fucking completely transforms the scene. And they're like, oh, this is what this guy is, right? This is a guy who can see it. He can feel where it's wrong. And he's a technician who can understand this is what's going wrong with this and immediately like fix it. And that's what he's going to be. De Mornay comes in. She's centered. Curtis Armstrong, Rickman talks about Curtis Armstrong and he says that like, in like looking at other actors and so forth, that he's never seen someone like Curtis Armstrong who comes in and every line is delivered perfect the first time, like in a way that comes off the page in a way that you couldn't even have anticipated. Curtis Armstrong does the first, sometimes you got to say, what the fuck?
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
And he gets the intonation of that in a way that hadn't even like happened in Brickman's brain. Right. And so you have all these actors and they're bringing the different backgrounds.
I'll tell you,
covering them.
To your point entirely, like, think about it. Curtis Armstrong plays this movie and then this becomes like the high school. Like you said, there's, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is awesome by Amy Heckerling. And it really deals with how messy teenage life can be. And, we're going into this there. We got to work and all this stuff. Like, kind of more realistic. It's Cameron Crowe getting into the weeds. It's not a critique in the same way. But Amy Heckerling kills that movie. She's so good. But this one with like Curtis Armstrong, he becomes like a caricature now that returns in all the 80s movies. He's in Better Off Dead. He's in Revenge of the Nerds and Booger.
And his character, like they get people to do the Curtis Armstrong character.
Totally.
Right? Like, so I was watching Breaking Away before this, it's like kind of thinking about coming of age things. And I was thinking about a number of other, coming of age films. And the thing is, Curtis Armstrong in Risky Business isn't Curtis Armstrong doing that character that's in a coming of age thing. He's a new character that like it becomes the prototype of this sort of sidekick.
Yeah, he's a type.
Is
And he's a type that comes out in Better Off Dead with John Cusack, and they're on the top of the mountain, and John Cusack has to scream. He's like, do you understand the street value of this mountain with all the snow? And just, he does stuff. But I'm like, that's right out of Risky Business.
Yeah.
And like, he kind of, like he said, he has to pipe at the scene when he's like, I don't need this. Like, he's an oddball character, but he becomes someone who kids of the 80s will like immediately identify with. Is kind of the smart, kind of
he's smart,
nutty,
nerdy, kind of cool. Like in this weird way, like in this quirky way, but like, I mean, not cool, right? But like there's something that, I don't know, he's got his own
cool in
drummer.
that he's going to Harvard, he's going to do well, and all those jerk-offs who made fun of him during high school are going to pay for it. But that's also part of what this movie is about, right? Like, there's also this kind of economy of success in high school that's being framed here. And I think this is, I do think that this is Brickman's best kind of piece, is the whole critique through Princeton, right? Like that ongoing anxiety that has become now a thing in the 80s, where going to university and going to the right university is something felt not only in the community, not only in school, not only by your parents, but almost, by everybody. And it's obviously a certain class. This is upper middle class, and they play on that too. I just think that movie's critique for him to throw away this movie in his career, which is so brilliant, for a shitty ending that should have never been there anyway, is just crazy. I think he missed the boat on his own success.
The other piece that we want to talk about, because, and we'll get off the 80s soon on this podcast, but like we talked about the allegorical 80s. No. Right? We talked about the allegorical 80s because it's one of the interesting pieces I have is like, and we've discovered a little bit where it comes from. The way that a lot of these plots in the 80s are dreamlike and they're allegorical. I mean, Joel is Joel Goodson, right? Joel Goodson. Like you can't do it. And then much of the movie is structured around two things, right? The dad's Porsche, right? And the mom's egg. Right? Like these are the two sort of, like you can't get more allegorical than that. And the Porsche is like very clearly sort of, you know, manhood and masculinity. And the egg is sort of very clearly like, you know, innocence and so forth. In these sorts of things go back and forth. And again, this isn't like, I'm not asking people to read this movie like a literature major and say, well, of course, you know, what happens is the Porsche is restored and that shows that he's made into manhood. And the egg has this little crack in it, which shows that maybe his innocence is lost. But I mean, come on, like it's like these are not things that are like deep readings of this. This is just like the whole movie is about these two things. And then, and so it becomes this sort of allegory, and it's meant to be felt allegorically and I think read allegorically and not again in this deep English major way, but it is, I think at its core, like a lot of what it's doing is sort of this dreamlike story that makes no sense on the surface, right? Like it doesn't make, like none of this happens, right? Like the movie begins with a dream, right? Begins with a dream and then the movie is dreamlike. And I kind of miss this element in the 80s as we look at these 80s films. I think a lot of films do like this different sorts of films you had in the 80s. A lot of films are still doing what films in the 80s did in terms of like action and things like that. But this sort of dreamlike allegory that was like finding its way into these different films, like, I don't know, it's enjoyable.
Absolutely. Joel, get off the babysitter. I mean, there's so many moments where it's nice to not know where you are. And then there's interesting moments that are dreamlike that are actually real. Like, for example, when Jackie, the transvestite call girl who comes, and there's this whole scene like keep them outside of this world. And then they finally have that transaction. It's like, Joel, just let me in so I can call a cab and then we can figure out what it is you want and I want. And so there's a moments throughout the movie where Joel is going from scared boy who's, you know, wearing his catcher mitt as he's talking to Lana on the phone in the corner, which is so dreamlike, to actually, you know, the kid who is later in this movie going to be walking around his house turned brothel, you know, dealing with everybody, making sure everyone's good, talking to the Princeton
too, right? Like, so Lana comes in, you know, in this very dreamlike sequence, you know, it just beautifully filmed. Initially comes in and, you know, he has given the name Ralph on the phone. She comes in this beautiful scene and he's like, you know, he's like, hello. And she's like, hello, Ralph. You know,
are you ready for me, Ralph?
Know, right in sort of the middle of it. But still like gorgeously filmed. And this is where we get to the train. Like there's some stuff here they're doing filmically that's just sort of, you know, unsurpassed. Awesome. I mean, some of this. So what's happening on the train is two things. One, they're slowing down time in the train. They're doing something called a double print that I don't fully understand, but it kind of messes with time a little. And then on the outside of the train, they're speeding it up, right? Like those outside shots have this sort of blurred acceleration to it, right? And so like time is completely warped for those moments.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And, you know, obviously Chicago is kind of like abstracted too. Everything's somewhat wet. You know, you have the elevated train. And I mean, I think for me, like Rebecca De Mornay, in those scenes when she is coming into him for the first time to his house or on the train, I mean, she makes, you know, Natasha Kinski and Cat people look like, you know,
Looked like an open book. Like she's got a level of mystery to her. Yeah,
I mean, she is absolutely brilliant in this. And obviously there's the eroticism and all that. But beyond that, she goes from that to being like, Joel, she's the one who comes up with the idea to turn his house into a brothel. She's the one who does the math. She's the one who has, breakfast with him in the morning and starts talking about like, how are we going to pay for this, Joel? Like, she is such an amazing character and fits him perfectly in that, like, you can see his attraction to her and all of that.
Yeah.
But you can also see that they're sparring and that she's been kind of cat and mousing with him the whole time. And you never see that in a relationship in any of these high school movies.
No.
Like, they just don't exist like this. Like, takes this movie to another level.
Yeah. I wonder too, like, I really wish we'd seen more. I mean, so Rebecca De Mornay pops up in a number of things over the years, right?
The only other one worth note really is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, which I watched recently, and I like her in a lot. But she's not nearly as good as this.
But I watched one just for this podcast. I watched, what was it? It was called like the Right Temptation or something like that. And it was this schlocky, like Kiefer Sutherland, Dana Delaney, Rebecca De Mornay thing. And like, you're just watching Rebecca De Mornay and you're like, man, someone's got to get her in a better movie, man. Like, exactly. And I don't, I think Cruise came out of this and he did All the Right Moves following it, which is not a great movie, but
I love All the Right Moves.
What?
I think it's a great movie. Oh, I think All the Right Moves is a totally great movie. It's up there with Risky Business for me.
Well, I haven't seen that one for a long time, so maybe
we got to return to it one day.
But yeah, I think she doesn't kind of have that 1-2 punch that Cruise had, and I think there was just a lot of competition to be that person in the.
And it's harder for actresses on top of that to get better roles, but it also goes back to what the casting agent said. Like, maybe sometimes you just hit fire, right? And like, she hit it big here and trying to return. Like, she was in The Three Musketeers. A lot of the movies she was in after this just sucked. Like, it wasn't even her. They sucked.
Yeah. Part of that's also like, part of that comes down to the actor making their decisions too, about what they get in.
The other thing I read about her in this is, she was up against all of the big ones. She was up against Michelle Pfeiffer, Kim Basinger, all of them read for this role, but a lot of them were like, I don't know if I want to go full call girl, so I'm going to back out. But she ultimately got it. And, I can't think of anyone else in this role. Like, she played a very unique role in my, 12 or 13-year-old imagination. I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, well, and it holds up when you watch it too. Like when he's like, are you my girlfriend? Yes, no, maybe. And she's like, yes, no, maybe,
so
and like, it's just an amazing sort of stuff. Let's talk about what. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I'm going to let you go because this is probably a separate topic.
Let's talk about the weirdness of this movie's climax. Like, the way I tend to look at what films are about is I try to figure out what's the climax of the film, right? And the climax of the film, you can go about it a different ways, but usually the climax of the film is the point late in the film where either the character's strategy, their approach, their character, right, their morality is tested under the highest stakes of the film, right? And then sort of the reality of who they are, who they've become is revealed, or their capability. It doesn't have to be a deep character thing. It can just be in an action film, it can just be they try a strategy to win this thing and it either plays out or it doesn't, The climax of this film, like, initially you think, well, the climax of this film maybe is them getting that house back together and getting it back before the parents come. And I don't buy that as the climax because like what are we testing with Joel there? Like, his ability to like move furniture into a house? Like it doesn't.
It's impossible to furnish that house in 2 hours.
It doesn't feel to me like the highest stakes of the film, and it doesn't feel like it tests anything about the character. I think the climax of the film, for me, is Guido on the truck. And him buying the stuff back, and ultimately, like, the sort of humiliation of him having to dive for that crystal, you know? And I think that's the climax. I think the weird thing is it doesn't read as a climax because the way I see this film is that Joel largely gets defeated in this smaller thing, right? And kind of learns a lesson about life in that, in terms of what you can control and what you can't. And then I think there's this sort of coda where he gets into Princeton and maybe, depending on the ending, ends up with the girl. But I honestly think the core of the movie is him buying back his stuff from Guido. I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
I like that idea. I think, to your point, I hadn't thought about this, but when I think about it just now, like, there's several climaxes. There's him getting on the train with Lana. Yeah. There's, him, obviously getting the Porsche fixed and going back, finding the house and then having to put it back together. That's another one. There's him getting into Princeton, right? So, like, there's three kind of moments. And I think the most, tense one is when, Joe Pantoliano is, counting the money and saying, hey, how would you like this stereo system?
Yeah,
or how would you like that? Like, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I think actually, like, one of the things watching this movie again is there is not a dull moment. This movie is brilliantly paced. It's brilliantly edited. It's brilliantly shot. Like, that's why I think, why would Brickman beat himself up about last 1 or 2 minutes? Like, this movie is really, like, a vessel. Like, it says something about the 80s like no other high school coming of age movie in the 80s does as well. Like, it really becomes off to itself. Like, it is a critique. It is funny, right? It's a star, vessel for Cruise. DeMornay has her best performance. That's Tangerine Dream. Like, there's so much when you watch this movie again, you forget about. You're like, God, this movie is so good.
Tangerine Dream is an interesting one. One thing you learn is they sent it over to Tangerine Dream, and we've seen Tangerine Dream in a couple of the films that we've talked about in the past. I think the first film we saw them in was it The Driver that had the Tangerine Dream soundtrack, the Walter Hill one?
I think it was The Thief.
The Thief had it, right? And so he sent it over to them, and they scored it initially. And it came back, scored like a teenage comedy. And he kind of said, no, actually, we want it scored like, deep and mysterious and melancholy. Like, it's a comedy, but we want, like, a lot of it's a comedy, right? Like, at this level, but then a lot of the presentation of it in terms of how it is filmed and how it is scored and so forth has a deep sort of melancholy to it, right? And, like, part of what is enjoyable and I think lovely about the movie is you get these two things together, right? You're laughing, and at the same time, the way that it's presented also has this sort of, melancholy is the only word I can come up with about it. And the two things kind of counter one and kind of allow you to swallow the whole pill.
And I like that. And I think the other thing it reminds me of, and it wasn't a Tangerine Dream score, it was a Pino Donaggio score from Body Double. Mm-hmm. There's like a series of scores now in the 80s that take this Tangerine Dream score and maybe The Thief, but I think the Tangerine Dream score of Risky Business is much better. And it becomes like a backdrop to the sense of these 80s movies. So it really is also like a radically new sense. But to your point, it really reinforces the melancholy and the dream-like vision of parts of this movie, which, to your point, and I hadn't thought about it, the dream sequences are so fun. And, like, it's such a nice addition to this movie, and that it goes in and, it's just part of them. Like, it's not like flashbacks, all this. No, it's just a seamless part of this film. And to think this is a first-time director, it's so good.
There's a whole, like, community on Reddit that is convinced that that the whole film is a dream, right? That we're in Joel's dreams, and that after a certain point, everything after the call, he makes the call, and everything after that is.
I think
is a dream.
Reddit's a dream.
I think right, it's a dream. I mean, I think they're wrong. I think they miss. I think that the read of that again, it comes back to they don't make films like this anymore. But at that time, the idea of just really playing with reality. So like Breaking Away is a good example of a coming of age thing. Breaking Away, I rewatched, I loved every minute of it. And I'm like bawling my eyes out when Dennis Quaid finally gets on that bike and is huffing and puffing his his smoker's lungs to try to help
the Cutters.
Try to help the Cutters, Such a great movie, but also like played straight. You know what I mean? There's nothing sort of dreamlike about that movie. It's got a sort of absurdity to it, but it's all a believable sort of absurdity. And it just played very straight. And I think what you see now is you see certain genres do play with the dreamlike stuff. Horror is a place where people play with the unreality of things, but I don't know. I don't see it as much in today, at least in the stuff that I see. I don't see it as much in the sort of dreamlike allegory. I don't see it as much in the non-genre stuff. And I think Reddit, when they go back and they look at this movie, are like, well, it's got to be a dream. Like, it's all filmed like a dream, right?
Yeah.
It's all like his name is Joel Goodson, right? like there's a crack in the crystal at the very point that Joel has lost his innocence. I mean, come on.
I'm telling you.
It's like no, that you could do that in the 80s.
There's something about Nathaniel Hawthorne here too. Because Nathaniel Hawthorne, who's,
Wait. You're bringing up.
I'm bringing up literature. I'm going to do a Mike Caulfield right now. Hold on.
You're the one,
hold my beer, Mike. Hold my beer.
Like Mike's going to bring up Emily Bronte again.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Hawthorne, 19th century American writer. If you haven't read him, he's really good. Anyway, a lot of his short stories, the name of the characters is Goodman. They go out into the wilderness, which for the Puritans was like this crazy space. And then they have these visions of the devil or of sex or of all these weird things. And you could make an argument, and those are allegorical stories. You can make an argument that, there's a little bit of playing that Brickman's doing with that. And I really I enjoy it. I enjoy reading this as an allegory. And that's why when it comes down to that hard ending, like, I love you. Yeah. It's like, or, things are so hard. It's like,
I'm feeling it, Jim. You know what? I think I'm getting there. I'm glad I brought you along last week on American Gigolo and on the ending, but I'm getting there because I think the strongest point for the ending is that the theatrical ending preserves, I think, the dreamlike quality of this.
Totally.
I think the director's cut, I mean, it's a beautiful shot, and I can see why, just that ending shot is just, to die for. But it doesn't. It kind of brings us back to reality, and this whole thing has been like a weird allegorical dream. So why not have an ending that is? And also that shot they did. It's not the ending piece they shot for theatrical wasn't just like, oh, we're going to talk. They're kind of wandering in the night, and there's sort of that neon glow coming off the buildings, and they're kind of wandering back and forth lit in this way.
It's similar to when they were stoned, and the car goes in. It had like a similar atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of nebulous. You're between things, and I like that, right? I really did.
It's a more dreamlike ending. Yeah. I mean, I can kind of see it.
I like that. I didn't think I would be able to convince you. You're a hard man to convince.
Well, I'm about 50-50 right now.
Damn
but
it. What do I got to do on this podcast?
No, but it brings us back also to, I mean, so this is like an early, the term didn't exist back then, but this is sort of is a comedy, but it's also what we would call in the 2010s, we started to call neon noir, right? Where you have, it's neon noir is it has a nocturnal element, but it's very sort of colorful. people have gone back and they've said, well, actually, like Diva is like an early neo noir, but it's talking about stuff like what was that? Drive? Is Drive the one that has
absolutely
what's his name
Gosling?
In it? Yeah. So it was a term that was kind of coined for a bunch of stuff from is that director Refn or Refn?
I think so. Yeah.
For that stuff that was going on in the 2010s, but you kind of have this here, and as a matter of fact, some of the train scenes. I don't know if you were thinking of this, but they struck. Have you seen this film, Chungking Express, Jim?
I have, yes.
Yeah. So some of the external train scenes and the way those are filmed remind me very much of Chungking Express and what they were doing there. But they kind of take that. They kind of take that method of showing the city in this sort of blurred stop motion way to another level in that film. But I again, like I think. There's a lot. I mean, what we come to with Risky Business is an early film before the genre had set, and there's a library of things that people are taking out of this. Like they've taken like that Curtis Armstrong character is now going to be a set character in every teen comedy, whether Curtis Armstrong is playing them or not. The some of the neon noir stuff like didn't just affect teen comedies. I think you look at a film like Chungking Express and you're like, they definitely watched Risky Business for this, right? In Chu's editing in this in particular.
Well, even so I think that John Hughes, after he did Vacation and Mr. Mom, essentially made a career out of remaking Risky Business in some way.
Making a slip.
Exactly. He's from Chicago. He loves to focus on the house and he loves to focus on high school life. He even does Home Alone. When you think about it with Home Alone and Risky Business, there's something there. But John Hughes has remade Risky Business. Yeah, he's remade Risky Business for a decade and made a fortune out of it. But his was always like, there's an authentic person beneath here once you get out of the roles they assign you, which is far less interesting than actually the system has already, putting you on trial and whether or not you can create a brothel out of your mom's home, which is another thing about, or your dad and mom's home is another thing about how crazy Risky Business is. Think about what they were dealing with in 83 with the sex, the implications of this. Like it kind of was like what we saw when we were talking about with Schrader and Hardcore and then American Gigolo and Cat People. Like, in the 80s now, this stuff is up for grabs. And this is one of the most delicate dealings with that. Like, it wasn't a Porky's. It wasn't about, putting your thing through a glory hole, right? Like, this was about thinking about the system that's created it. You know? It's great.
There's a bunch. I mean, they actually do mention Home Alone in the commentary. Someone says they kind of did that in Home Alone too. And it's like, I kind of thought, I've noticed, even this idea of, hey, the parents are coming and we're watching the car come back and they're trying to make it look like nothing had happened. I can't find a scene like that previous to this, right? And this is what I mean by it's sort of a library of these things that people pull their own pieces, but no one has them all together because you don't have this thing that is melancholy and mysterious and allegorical and funny and has the Curtis Armstrong character and has these tropes that become very common in teen
Guido
comedy.
The Killer Pimp, right? So you're introducing, I mean, that's a whole nother character.
This is even before Something Wild, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Something Wild's, I think, 84,
I think it's
85.
about the same. Yeah.
Something Wild does come after this, though.
Yeah. And so it's just it's always interesting to see these films before, I think the genre sticks because
86 is Something Wild.
Wow.
So definitely much later. Absolutely.
Like some of the stuff going on. I
mean, think about that. Where do you see kind of like a comic mobster playing?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm sure they exist, but I'm trying to think off the top of my mind in these kind of movies.
Yeah.
Never does the world of prostitution and mafia or anything find their way into one of these movies in a convincing way.
Yeah.
And yet this movie handles all that so seamlessly.
Guido is himself is an interesting character that we could talk about because, he gets this very, tropish, nickname of the Killer Pimp. But of course, he's not a killer. It's like, he's and he's not portrayed as stupid, and he's not portrayed as cruel, although he's not. I'm not saying that he's a nice person, but yeah, it's a character where we're actually not asked to hate Guido.
No,
in this film,
we understand that
hating Guido is like hating the rain. Like, it's just like, you could, but what are you going to do? It's just a fact of nature, you know?
But also the way the movie plays it is like Guido is in on it with Lana.
Is he?
And I think so. And it's a long con that they're all playing. I think that's what Lana is trying to tell Joel. Like, this game you're getting into is a long con, and I'm part of it, and I can still be your girlfriend, but I also still have to answer back to Guido. And this is more of a complex world than you realize. Like, I think for me, like, the whole long con piece of what they're doing to Joel is the lesson. That's the university. That's the experience. That's what he really gets, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like the fact that it's ambiguous how involved Lana is. I will say that the joy in which Lana's friend, who I forget her name, is selling the stuff off the back of the truck.
Exactly.
Definitely feels to me like she doesn't look exactly depressed to be back.
And Lana is, conveniently absent that morning.
Conveniently absent.
It is. I mean, I think they're pretty clear. I don't know if they say it on the commentary, but it's pretty clear that this is a con for Joel, and he fell into it. And Guido is just smart. He knows, rather than hurting this kid, which will bring down the law on him in a major way, he's going to take what he can from him. He's going to sell him back his own furniture and make a fortune. So he made all that money from the brothel and didn't even have to be there.
The other piece of that, I think, brings us to something Brickman says about the film, which I found interesting, which is that the satire of capitalism he sees as the sort of vocabulary of the film is not inauthentic. I mean, he actually believes that, but that he really wishes people wouldn't see it just as capitalism, but he sees it just as a sort of eternal story, whether you're in ancient Rome or the Ming Dynasty, of you kind of come up through life and you believe life has this sort of way, and then you kind of learn how the world works, and the world kind of doesn't care about you, and that's like your kind of realization is that like you're much smaller in this world than you realize, and you're much in the sort of vicissitudes of fortune are just a much bigger part of your reality than your personal agency in what you've been led to believe. And so the capitalism piece of that is very strong and so forth, and it's absolutely there. But I thought it was interesting that Brickman said, yeah, it is about capitalism. It is about the way that we tell our story, that particular story. We use the vocabulary of capitalism to tell us that story, that we all have this agency and we do the right things, right? And we do all the right things. We get into the right school and they punch our ticket, and then it's never going to be a slog again. And what he missed about that ending was that Lana, part of it was that Lana line that, a lesson of this is it's always going to be a slog. Like, that it's always going to be a slog, that there is no golden ticket. Right. And you can try your hardest and you can still lose, and that's the lesson in his mind. And I the question we started with was, does the end preserve that? And I maybe I agree with Tom Cruise. Like, yeah, it's not in the theatrical cut to the level it was in the director's cut, but you don't got to hit your audience's head over. You don't got to hit your audience in the head with it. Like you've got a whole movie that expresses that perfectly already. Like, all you got to do at the end is just stick a landing, because the rest of the movie has made the case. And I don't know. I think you got me. I think you, Tom Cruise, and David Geffen have convinced me.
Good company. Now, if I just had a fraction of their money.
Yeah. You made all the right moves, Jim.
Made all the right moves in this podcast. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
All right. We've somehow shambled our way to the end of another episode here.
Tell me about the disc, Mike. I want to know.
The disc is a 4K plus Blu-ray. It's a two disc entry here.
Nice.
I killed myself because if we had just decided this like a week earlier, we could have gotten on the Criterion sale. I did not, but it's still pretty cheap. And I'll show you something very unique for Criterion.
Yes.
Is usually Criterion puts this like little like film professor book in here. Like that's what you would get, and you get like a little mini essay. That's not what they did for Risky Business. What they did for Risky Business is they went full Happy Meal.
My God, it's a Happy Meal? It's a full poster.
It's a full poster, and then they put their little film professor essay on the back.
Brilliant.
Kind of smart, right?
Yeah.
Kind of smart.
They should do more of that.
Yeah. I just noticed here the car in this poster is not the car.
Oh, it's not the 928?
I don't think that is. Is
But
it?
we didn't even talk about the car. Like American Gigolo made the, convertible Mercedes the thing. Yeah. And I think this whole line like Porsche
and Ray-Ban.
Except and Ray-Ban, except no substitutes. As well as Ray-Ban. Exactly.
The American Gigolo had the Armani suits and the Mercedes, and this is the Porsche and the Ray-Bans.
Totally.
And we're kind of working our way through the 80s.
But it's interesting because these movies, even if, Brickman's going to say, it was it was a critique on capitalism, and you can definitely say that, but it was also doing what capitalism does.
Yeah, it was also doing what capitalism does.
It was taking that critique and selling it.
When Geffen said, you will direct this. Exactly. This will be your ending. No one is going to see a movie where Tom Cruise does not potentially get the girl.
Yeah, exactly.
And Geffen was right.
Yeah, he was right.
All right. Well, next week we'll find a movie to talk about, and we'll talk about it then.
Will it be an 80s movie, Mike?
Will be an 80s movie? Do we got to get off the 80s, or should we stay? Are we on a roll?
I think we got to stick with the 80s. The 80s has been very, very good to us.
It's been good to us. All right. We'll find another 80s film to talk about. Until then, see you guys later.
Bye-bye, everybody.